Walk into any grocery store today, and you are stepping into a loud, confusing, and deeply anxious landscape. You are bombarded with 1,000 competing messages, a cacophony of health claims and scientific jargon. Low fat, high fiber, zero net carbs, fortified with antioxidants, supports heart health. We are living in an age with more nutritional information available than ever before in human history, and yet we are sicker, fatter, and more confused about what to eat than ever before. How did we get here? How did one of the most basic, instinctual, and joyful human activities, eating, become so complicated and so stressful? And what if the entire way we've been taught to think about food for the last 50 years is fundamentally wrong? In his groundbreaking book, In Defense of Food and Eater's Manifesto, the brilliant journalist and food philosopher Michael Pollan takes us on an investigation. This book is the deep dive, the full story behind his famous 7-word mantra, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. It's an exposé of the flawed ideology that has taken over our plates, a history of the unhealthy Western diet that has made us sick, and a simple, powerful, and deeply liberating manifesto for how we can escape the confusion and learn to eat well again. This is not a diet book. It is a declaration of independence from the so-called experts and a return to the simple, profound wisdom of real food. The rise of nutritionism, the ideology that made us sick. To understand our current confusion, Pollan argues, you have to understand the ruling ideology of our time. It's an ideology that most of us don't even know has a name, but it governs almost everything we think about food. He calls it nutritionism. Nutritionism is not a science, it's an ism, a belief system, and it has 3 main tenets. The first is that the most important thing about a food is not the food itself, but the nutrients it contains. So, a potato is not a potato. It is a delivery system for potassium and vitamin C. A piece of meat is a package of protein and saturated fat. This way of thinking completely removes food from its natural context and reduces it to a pile of chemicals. The second tenet is that because nutrients are invisible and incredibly complex, you need an expert priest class, scientists, nutritionists, journalists, and food marketers to tell you how to eat. You can't trust your own senses or your own culture's traditions. You need an expert to decipher the secret code of nutrients for you. This creates a culture of constant anxiety, where the rules of eating are always changing based on the latest scientific study. One year, fat is the enemy. The next, it's carbs. One year, eggs are bad for your heart. The next, they're a superfood. This constant shifting of advice keeps us insecure and dependent on the experts. The third and most important tenet of nutritionism is that the entire purpose of eating is a purely biological, mechanical process to promote physical health. The world is divided into good nutrients and evil nutrients. Our job is to eat more of the good ones and avoid the bad ones to fight off disease. This way of thinking completely ignores the profound cultural, social, and pleasurable dimensions of eating. Now, why is this ideology so powerful? Because it is incredibly useful to the food industry. If food is just a collection of nutrients, then food manufacturers can start engineering products that look like food, but are actually just clever arrangements of refined ingredients. They can take the fiber out of whole grains to make them last longer on the shelf, and then fortify the resulting white flour with a few synthetic vitamins and call it enriched. They can create a sugary breakfast cereal, add a cheap fiber supplement, and then slap a health claim on the box that says it supports digestive health. Nutritionism is the food industry's best friend. It allows them to create and market an endless variety of highly profitable, edible, food-like substances, all while masquerading as healthy. The fall of the Western diet, a historical investigation. The ideology of nutritionism needed a villain, a single evil nutrient to blame for all our health problems. And in the mid-20th century it found one, saturated fat. Based on some influential but, as Pollan argues, deeply flawed scientific studies, the idea that dietary fat and cholesterol were the cause of the rising epidemic of heart disease took hold. This led to a massive shift in the American diet, a shift that was encouraged by the government, the medical establishment, and the food industry. The era of the low-fat craze began. We were told to replace butter with margarine, to drink skim milk, to eat lean meat, and to fill our plates with heart-healthy carbohydrates like pasta, bread, and potatoes. The food industry responded with an explosion of new, low-fat and fat-free products. But there was a problem. When you take the fat out of food, you also take out most of the flavor and texture. So to make these products palatable, the industry replaced the fat with something else: sugar, refined flour, and other processed carbohydrates. The result of this massive national experiment was a public health catastrophe. We dutifully ate less fat and we ate far more refined carbohydrates and sugar. And what happened? The rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes and heart disease didn't go down, they skyrocketed. We had been sold a bill of goods. Pollan defines this way of eating as the Western diet. It's a diet characterized by a few key features. It's high in processed foods, high in refined grains and sugar, low in whole fruits and vegetables, and it has fundamentally changed the balance of fats in our diet, moving away from healthy omega-3s and towards an overabundance of inflammatory omega-6s from industrial seed oils like soy and corn oil. He presents a powerful piece of evidence against this diet. He looks at numerous studies of traditional cultures around the world, from the Inuit in the Arctic to tribes in Africa. These cultures had wildly different diets. Some were very high in fat, some very high in carbohydrates, but the one thing they all had in common was that they did not eat the modern processed Western diet, and as a result, they were almost completely free of the chronic diseases that plague us, like heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. But in every single case, when these populations abandoned their traditional ways of eating and adopted the Western diet of flour, sugar, and processed foods, they began to suffer from these very same diseases within a single generation. The evidence is overwhelming. It is the diet itself, this new and bizarre way of eating, that is making us sick. Escaping the matrix, the philosophy of eat food. So if the ideology of nutritionism is a trap, and the Western diet is the poison, how do we escape? This brings us back to Pollan's simple, powerful manifesto, which is all about rejecting the complexity of nutritionism and returning to the simple wisdom of food. The first and most important rule is simply to eat food. This sounds obvious, but in the modern supermarket it's a revolutionary act. It means learning to distinguish between real food and the edible, food-like substances that pretend to be food. The first rule is, don't eat anything your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. This is a brilliant historical filter. Your great-grandmother would recognize a chicken, a carrot, or an apple. She would be utterly baffled by a Lunchable, a Cheeto, or a brightly colored sports drink. This rule isn't about being old-fashioned, it's about recognizing that for millennia, humans have thrived on a diet of whole foods from nature. Our bodies are adapted to this. They are not adapted to the thousands of new chemical creations that have been introduced into the food supply in the last few decades. Another set of rules involves reading the label. He says don't eat anything with more than 5 ingredients and avoid food products containing ingredients a third grader cannot pronounce. These are not strict scientific laws, but they are excellent rules of thumb. Real food is simple. An avocado has 1 ingredient, a bag of spinach has 1 ingredient, but a box of processed crackers can have 30 ingredients, many of which are unpronounceable chemicals. If the label reads like a science experiment, it's a good sign that the product is a product of industry, not of nature. Perhaps his most counterintuitive and powerful rule is, avoid food products that make health claims on the package. The truly healthy foods in the supermarket, the fresh fruits and vegetables in the produce aisle, are the quietest. They don't need to brag about their health benefits. An apple doesn't have a label that says, a good source of fiber. It's the processed foods, the sugary cereals and the refined snack bars that need to shout about the 1 or 2 healthy ingredients that have been added to them to distract you from all the unhealthy ones. The second part of Pollan's manifesto is mostly plants. This is not a demand for everyone to become a vegetarian. It's a simple observation that the common thread among the healthiest people in the world throughout history is that their diets are centered on plants. He encourages us to think of meat as a side dish or a condiment rather than the centerpiece of every meal. He also goes deeper into the quality of the plants we eat. He encourages us to eat a wide variety of different species, to eat the rainbow, as the saying goes. He also makes a powerful case for eating plants that have been grown in healthy organic soil. The health of the soil is directly linked to the nutritional quality of the food that grows in it. The third part of the mantra, not too much, is where Pollan's argument becomes most philosophical. He argues that our problem with overeating is not a problem of individual willpower, but a problem of culture. This is why he offers rules that are about how we eat, not just what we eat. For example, eat at a table, not a desk. The simple act of sitting down and giving a meal your full attention is a powerful tool against mindless overeating. Try not to eat alone. For most of human history, eating was a social activity. When we eat with others, we tend to eat more slowly and enjoy our food more. He also suggests that we pay more, eat less. This sounds like advice only for the wealthy, but his point is a deeper one. In America, we spend a smaller percentage of our income on food than almost any other society in history. We have prioritized quantity over quality, and the single most important rule for taking back control of your food is to cook. When you cook, you are no longer a passive consumer of the food industry's products. You are forced to handle real whole ingredients. Cooking is the one act that breaks the entire chain of the industrial food system. The ultimate message of In Defense of Food is a profoundly liberating one. Eating well should not be a source of anxiety and confusion. It should be a source of pleasure, of community, and of connection to the natural world. Pollan's manifesto gives us the tools to reject the flawed ideology of nutritionism, to see the Western diet for what it is, and to return to a way of eating that is based on the simple, time-tested wisdom of real food. It is a powerful defense of one of the most fundamental and joyful parts of our human experience. It is a deep inquiry into how we can find health and happiness not in the latest scientific study but in a simple, delicious meal shared with people we love. If that is an inquiry that resonates with you, then you are in the right place. Welcome to Geeky Philosopher, subscribe, and let's continue the journey.